the software that we are building can become a lot more human and a lot more accessible to people and a lot more powerful because of that. So I'm really excited about how many more AI companies are coming into the picture, many more tools are available for us to interface with them. So I think as this becomes more and more native to more SaaS products, I think it's going to be really the golden age of software.
Welcome to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, E-commerce Marketing Podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen, and today we've got a very special guest. I'm the host, of course, here, and today we'll be joined by Satej Sirur, who is the CEO of Rocketium, and with over nearly 2 decades in software innovation, including time at Microsoft and AWS. Satej is known for driving automation and creative excellence. He was recently named one of RETHINK Retail's top AI leaders, and he's here to share how AI is fastly reshaping the way brands produce ad creatives. Welcome to the show, Satej.
Thanks for having me, Arlen. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for joining us today. And really excited to dive right in. Like I said, about the topic for today is AI and ad creatives. And, I've been in business, as I told you before we started recording, for a long time. We're going on 25 years as a business, a software business, OSI affiliate software. And I've seen it all, when it comes to tech innovation. We actually started off as a full service web development agency. And wow, I'm dating myself, of course, but I remember when we were developing our first sites, when we kind of launched out and started a business. I think I was the one that kind of developed some of our first client sites. And it's just amazing the leap that's gone from the tools that were available then to now. We were using tools like Microsoft Front Page, which I think at this point is defunct. I don't think they even have that product anymore. That was their web builder. And let's see, we were using some graphic tools. Adobe Photoshop was actually available back then.
Of course.
Not as robust as it is now. Of course, there was no software as a service version of it. It was, you had to get a series of disks, I believe, and install that on your drives. And so things were a little bit different. But when I think about the level of effort that it took to create images and graphic creatives and you name it, it was, you had to have that skill set to really do it. And we had a great team of guys back then. There was some graphic designers that worked with us, some different web developers, and we had to heavily rely on them for the graphic side of it. Now things are, a little bit different. So we're going to be diving into all of that. But before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? I'm really curious about, really how your experience at Microsoft, at AWS, really just led you to create Rocketium and that whole creative automation that you guys have come up with.
Yeah, of course. So the jobs that I've had before, they weren't related to marketing or design, but at least the fundamentals of how we work today were really shaped by those places, right? So as a developer, you don't want to do the same thing more than 2 or 3 times. There is a natural itch that any developer gets if they are doing some repetitive activity. So automating something as part of your daily life is just table stakes. You would just keep doing that.
Correct.
Even on your personal life, this thing kind of bleeds through. And that is certainly one thing that we took over when we were doing things at Rocketium. Same way at AWS, there was a big focus on metrics, on being data driven to make any decisions. Also, looking at customers, talking to them, understanding them, and then building products instead of focusing on competitors. So, those are some things that we have taken to Rocketium, and those principles we apply. Having
Okay.
said that, this product, the way we are operating now, was a result of a very large e-commerce and advertising company coming to us and saying that they wanted to build their own product using our API. And as we were brainstorming, we really understood the problem deeper, and we realized that with a little bit of shift in perspective, the B2C video product that we had, which was an online video creator, we used to think of it like Canva for video, that could be repurposed to build this enterprise ready large scale content creation, review, and over time insights, doing all of that in one place. That idea came through from that conversation. We validated
Mhm.
this with a few other customers. So really the product exists because a our potential customers are open enough to sharing how they work, what problem they are trying to solve, instead of saying I want this feature or that feature. And then we being
Interesting.
open enough to saying that, hey, why don't we explore this? And of course, it's easier to be open to this when one of the largest companies in the world approaches you, and everything else that you were doing until then just feels minuscule in comparison. But
Right, for
I
sure.
think even today we keep some of that spirit that the world is changing too fast. There is so much amazing tech that is available to us. How do we apply it to the real world, to our customers? Let's listen to how they work. Let's listen to what they are trying to do, where they are trying to go, and apply it over there. So some of those principles continue to be relevant for us today.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome, and I've heard this so many times before from founders and people that have started companies where the idea or the spark for the company has come from a problem that's out there, either something that they faced directly themselves as the founders or their clients had faced. Now, kind of circling back as far as pinpointing this particular problem, what really was the main pain point that this client or this particular client had that was like a kind of a light bulb moment for you guys?
Yeah, so there were two broad problems over here. One was that one great piece of design is not cutting it when it comes to getting great outcomes for your ad campaigns. You
Okay.
have one piece of design, you have to make many more versions of it, resizing it for the different places where their audience would see it, different platforms, different places within those platforms. And then the content itself has to be iterated on, made versions with, where you are saying trying different copy, different layouts, different models, different offers that you might be doing. So that was the first insight, which was that one great piece of design that a Photoshop, Illustrator, Figma are really really good at, that's not good enough to succeed anymore. So people need many versions of content. And the second one was that if you are breaking up your content into the different layers of it, the different pieces that go into the piece of design, then you can do very interesting things with it. So as a few examples that I'll give you, one is that you can give a very different experience to a designer who is
Hmm.
used to using a certain kind of a design product, so they would expect certain kind of user interface, and a non-designer who would just get freaked out if they see a design experience. So if your piece of content is broken into, let's say, the copy, the product imagery, the logo, maybe five or six elements that go into the design, you can give a very simple experience to a non-designer so that they could go and change it. That's
Hmm.
revolutionary for our customers, because until then, any change that they had to make, they would have to raise a ticket, it would go to a designer, they would fire up a Photoshop, make the change, give you back the
Exactly.
file. Now you let them just go and update an offer, a price, whatever else, very quickly. Second, instead of giving it to somebody to review and then manually have them look at all of the designs, because this stuff is in separate layers, we can validate each one of them for correctness and compliance and governance and best practices. So for example, are they using some words that are not allowed, or is something overlapping with each other, is there a contrast or accessibility related issues? All of those things can be checked automatically, right? Same way, insights can be figured out because you have information about the different layers that go into your design. So now we can connect to different ad platforms, get the performance data, how much has been spent on something, what sort of results has it led to, add to that information about these layers, saying what sort of messaging have they used, what sort of imagery have they used, and myriad other things that we can figure out from the layers and correlate that to performance. So now we can tell you that every time you are using a very high discount percentage, it doesn't work as well as maybe using a lower discount percentage or just talking about a product benefit, something which no other platform gives you because they don't really focus on the creator, right? So those two quick insights, which are really fundamental to us, those really drove the entire product and everything that we have done since then.
Okay, yeah, that's really impressive to be able to do all of that, and I would imagine, of course, all of this has come from the needs that many of these these e-commerce businesses and these enterprise level e-commerce businesses are dealing with, because they're dealing with such a volume of content, the imagery. Some of these large e-commerce retailers, I mean, they're dealing with thousands and thousands of products. And it's, when you're thinking about modifying and changing imagery and then coming up with specific ads for different product lines, it becomes a huge headache and a nightmare. From your previous conversations with brands like that before they were introduced to AI tools like what you guys have provided and some of the other plethora of tools that are out there, what had you seen were the biggest bottlenecks to, getting these creatives done?
Yeah, so the couple of big bottlenecks that we realized, one was that work was happening on 4 or 5 different tools that did not speak with each other. So
Okay.
design was done in typically a Photoshop. The files after designing, they were dropped into something like a Google Drive or WeTransfer or something like that.
Yeah.
Feedback was now either sent over a messaging system like a Slack or Teams or email, or put into a project management system. Ticketing was either done in that sort of project management system. Sometimes it was done in things like Salesforce or Monday.com, things like that. So that was the first part, which was that work was happening in all of these different places. Second, only specialists could access each of those tools and work over there.
Right.
So, like I give you that example, that a small change in the copy, somebody knows what the copy should be, or somebody
Yep.
has the asset that, let's say, the photo studio has given them. They just need to replace that. They are not allowed to do it because that tool they don't have access to, or it's too complex, or whatever else. So now they
Yes.
have to go through these disconnected tools, raise a request, have somebody do it. Same way, if a creative team wants to know about performance numbers, saying, hey, we've tried this new look and feel, or we've tried this a kind of lighting that we have tried for something, or this sort of copy we are going with, how has this performed? There's no way for them to get that access because that is sitting somewhere else. The problem with this also is that somebody who's trying to look at the process and figure out where there are bottlenecks, what should I improve, does not really have this, because this is not measured, this is not connected anywhere. So as a manager, if I want to know, hey, how many open requests we have, I have to go to one tool. If I have to know that where are we taking more time, you have to go somewhere else. If they have to know that what sort of feedback are we getting, I have to go to a third tool, versus now having that all in one single place, right? So some of these were bottlenecks, and the biggest one was that most of these tools were built for an age where you needed few pieces of content. So you
Right.
could go through this kind of a process because 10 pieces of content a quarter is like, because this stuff is going on billboards or
Yes, exactly.
a TV spot or Super Bowl commercial or whatever, it was okay to take that much time. And
Yeah.
these tools were absolutely fine for it. And like you said, as the scale has gone up to tens of thousands of pieces of content, some of our customers are doing that a day, tens of thousands of pieces of content, right? So when you're operating at that sort of scale, all of these systems break. And so you need a high level of automation, a high degree of decentralization, all of it with some level of governance to make sure that things are not going awry, and obviously using insights to drive all of these decisions. All of that was not present earlier.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And speaking of not present earlier, I mean, we're just looking at just a couple years ago. I mean, I've experienced these things myself firsthand, where just 2 years ago, before the really kind of inclusion of all of these AI tools that have made these things done, the job of this editing and all of this whole process, before all of this was introduced. Yeah, it was somewhat of a nightmare. And I mean, just on a small scale, just even with our business, I recall 2 years ago, we needed some ad imagery modified. I think this was actually for our podcast, actually. And we had a graphic designer who would create the creatives and all of the things that we would need for the podcast creatives. And there was one time where he was just unreachable. This was, I think, a freelancer that we were dealing with at the time. Unreachable. We knew we had to publish the podcast. And I remember, one late night, I'm here Googling, trying to find it. And we had like a template Adobe Photoshop file. And I was like, I don't have Photoshop. That's a tool that only our designers have. So I'm here late night Googling online Photoshop editing tools. And so I think I found one site that actually did allow you to edit some Photoshop tools. But I mean, it took me almost a couple of hours just to figure out how to do what. And the end result was just not good. It wasn't up to par, but we went ahead and did it because we didn't really have too many other options. Our developer was nowhere to be found, the designer, and we had to get out there. But fast forwarding to today, which is just like I said, 2 years later, things are a lot different. And, I think it's definitely, like you said, have streamlined the process for so many brands, especially those that are talking about dealing with thousands and thousands of ad creatives. Now, let's say if we're looking at this whole process has now been streamlined, of course, through the AI workflows. Could you walk us through, let's say, a real world example, perhaps, from your work that you've done with Colgate Palmolive? Hey, before we jump into the next question, I want to take a quick second to talk about something that's been a game changer for so many business owners, including myself. That's public speaking. If you're running an e-commerce brand, marketing agency, or any business, your ability to communicate clearly and confidently can really make all the difference. Whether you're pitching to investors, speaking at conferences, or even just creating content that connects with your audience. That's exactly why I created speaktoempower.com, a coaching program designed to help you master public speaking without fear. You can start with my free 10-day course where I walk through essential strategies to overcome nervousness, engage in the audience, and speak with confidence. And if you want to go even deeper, I offer weekly virtual group coaching sessions and one-on-one coaching tailored to your needs. So if you've ever felt like you could be more confident on camera, on stage, or even in day-to-day business conversations, head over to speaktoempower.com and get started for free today. All right, now back to the episode.
Yeah, so Colgate is an example. I'm just going to generalize and give people
Sure.
a sense of how different brands would do it.
Absolutely.
So in the case of brands, when they advertise, they would obviously you have your Facebooks and Instagrams and YouTube, Google display networks. That is one type of ad platform. The other is all of your retail media networks, things like Amazon, Walmart, Target, Instacart. All of them have ad businesses. So the first challenge that a company like them would have is that every platform has different placements. So somebody has a search page where you have a content that is maybe horizontal and landscape that you would need. Somebody else has a full screen, a story like piece of content. So you would need something that is portrait and everything in between, right? So a challenge for a lot of brands who are our customers is that for all of these different channels, they have to have resizing capability so that one piece of design can be resized to sometimes 50 to 75 different sizes to go into all of these platforms. Second, all the platforms don't have the same requirements for what the content can have. Somebody says you cannot have a button in it because we add the button automatically. Somebody says you can't have more than some amount of text. Somebody says, so there are different guidelines for each of those. There are also different best practices for each platform, saying some prefer if you have, let's say, more colors or more logos and more product imagery, whereas some others don't, right? So you need to know the context of each channel, what your audiences are doing there, and what is the best way to reach people over there. So now that becomes another dimension for them, right? The last dimension becomes, are you launching a product? Are you driving certain offers? Because let's say it's Mother's Day just went by. So was it something related to that you were trying to do? So depending on the audience and time of year and various other things, you might have different messaging and imagery and layouts that you might want to have. So for these kinds of companies, the way it works today with Rocketium is that they would templatize their designs by bringing in their
Hmm.
Photoshop files or Illustrator, Figma, any of those, set up standard designs that they agree on before the
Okay.
campaign. So now they
I
have a
see.
growing repository of agreed upon designs. You could, of course, just on the fly make a new piece of content and go ahead, but you would make these designs. Then, when from the category teams or ad teams, campaign teams, you would get a brief saying that I need 100 pieces of content with this kind of copy and these product assets. The product assets are stored in Rocketium. Logos, font files, everything is stored in Rocketium. So when the request comes, they would take that all of the copy and product imagery and assets, all of those
Hmm.
things, combine that with the template that they've made, and in one shot Rocketium makes all the different versions. So you upload a
I
spreadsheet, all
see.
the different versions get made, and in one click they're able to add the 50, 75 sizes. Rocketium automates the size adaptation, so it smartly redoes the layout, making sure everything is laid out in a way that you can, everything is according to your brand guidelines, you can view it correctly and so on. But it's not, our AI is not taking executive decisions saying that this is how
Right.
something should look. It looks at your design, looks at what your designers have done, what design choices they've made, and uses that to adapt it to new sizes, right? So
Okay.
that's the power of AI that we've worked on for all these years.
Okay.
Once that is done, one level of checks already happens to say that, like I said, what sort of words, is there alignment, are there color issues, accessibility, reading, is something too big or too small. All of those checks happen because if you're making 100 pieces of content for this one request, how are you going to check all of those and several others and still return all of this content in time? So
Hmm.
one set of checks happens. Then right in our platform, the designer would assign this project back to the person who raised the request. They would get notified, they come here, they can see all the pieces of design in one view, they can leave a comment. If they have access, they could make small changes on their own, and then the file is ready to be downloaded. Even here there are some nuances where somebody like Colgate or other brands really struggle, which is that I have 100 pieces of content, every platform has different requirements for how large the file should be. So
Right.
somebody is otherwise manually downloading the file, renaming it a certain way,
Yeah.
compressing the files to be of a certain size. Rocketium automates all of that, right? So
Okay.
going from a brief and a Photoshop or Figma file or any sort of design that you start off with, combining all of those things to make all of these different versions, some of this stuff can happen in a matter of 30 minutes, which
Hmm.
is incredible for these customers because they used to take sometimes weeks to do this, right? So especially when it comes to these sale events where you have to be really nimble. Let's say you find out that your products are really moving and you don't want to have such an aggressive discount percentage. Let's say sometimes customers meet a sale number and then they want to kind of maximize their profit, so they would just go and change their profit percentage. Those
Right.
kinds of things used to take 2 days just to turn around, just a small change like that. Now they're able to do it in minutes, right? And
Hmm.
obviously there is a direct revenue impact. So and all of this is still on the content creation side. The other angle to this is around analytics. So what our customers are now able to do is real time, they are able to see the performance of their creatives, what all the platforms are giving, dive deeper into it, the way you have deep research in OpenAI and on Claude, you're able to do that sort of deep research to ask, how is my return on ad spend changing, which campaigns are doing better, what sort of copy is working best for me. And we are able to munch through millions of data points through all of your pieces of content and across all days and all creatives that you run, and give you answers to that, right? So that sort of power did not exist at all. They used to
Right.
get
I
that,
see.
most brands would get that from their agency or from
Mm.
Google or Facebook every quarter or every 6 months. And
Right.
now one morning, if you're curious about it, you type it and you get that answer, right? So that has been
That's true.
transformational for our customers.
That's yeah. That sounds awesome. Is it fair to say that uh, the technology is there? Like you said, there's a lot of these AI tools out here that will, especially with ChatGPT's latest image creation update. Is it fair to say that if a brand doesn't, let's say, have your solution, they can do these things to a certain extent? I think what it sounds like, you're what you guys have injected into this is more of a workflow and process to streamline it, expedite it, make it quicker, and make it possible to do at large scale. Is that where I guess you could say your guys' value add comes into play?
Yeah. So the primary value is not that you are not able to do this at all and you are able to do this. The value is that you are able to do this. Even without AI, you used to do it with hiring more people, throwing
Right,
bodies
right.
at the problem, or just
Absolutely.
taking too long, and so on. With AI, you're able to do some of these things, but still, AI now becomes a replacement for what a Photoshop did. So
Yeah.
instead of doing that in Photoshop, that part got freed up. But now you're sitting and making all these size adaptations. You're writing prompts for every one of those.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's you
true.
shifted the problem a little bit. But let's say I
I
get
see.
all the files. What's going to happen? Somebody's going to go into Chat GPT and give you feedback. What does that do?
Right.
Right? So
Exactly.
so it does solve the problem to a certain degree, but what we have seen OpenAI is really good at is at the start of the problem, which is
Hmm.
that give me some ideas for what I should be doing. It
Right.
doesn't know your data, your brand. It doesn't have access to your Facebook, Google, every other ad platform's data to tell you what has worked for you. So now, are you going to download data from all of those places, few GBs worth of data, give it to
Hmm.
ChatGPT and say, search through it? Right. So it's a very powerful tool, but it's the tool part of it is something that can be used for smaller problems, maybe ideation and maybe some of those concepting and stuff. But the technology part of it is best used when it is incorporated into something like Rocketium to
Hmm.
then do the analysis at scale, right? So somewhere a combination of AI and SaaS is really where the future is.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah, and all of that makes sense. Like you said, I think the chat GPT has kind of replaced that certain aspect of it, the creation part of it, the Adobe Photoshop aspect of it. And yeah, it's replaced it. It's made it quicker. It's made it a lot easier. It's made it available to everyone, which is a big thing where you don't have to be a graphic designer to generate these things. And so I think it has its place, for the smaller e-commerce shops, the solopreneurs, the shops that that aren't these massive e-commerce sites that are getting tons of traffic, have all of these products. It can definitely help a smaller shop be able
For
to do
sure.
things, fairly effectively without actually hiring a graphic designer. So I think it definitely has a place there. But yeah, I definitely agree with you as far as the larger enterprise businesses that are doing millions and millions of revenue dollars in revenue per day, and dealing with the hundreds and thousands of images and changes. Yes, it has to be more of a automated, streamlined solution, similar to what you guys have provided. So I can definitely see a huge place in the market for it. Now, Satej, looking ahead, how do you see AI's role really in this whole creative production space just evolving over the next few years? Are there any exciting or emerging technologies or trends that are hot right now that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I think more than anything, I'm really excited about people just being open to using technology like this. A lot of people
Okay.
are still stuck in their old ways. They feel that you have to have the human touch and feel to do everything. So even automation, they are really resistant to. So now with AI, it goes one level further, and if you want, it could take away even more control from your day to day, right? So that is
Mm,
certainly a thing that I'm most excited about, which is more companies being open to the idea using
yeah.
AI as part of their work. Also, as somebody who's building software, it's incredible that they all have AI APIs that we can use so that we can bring in more smarts into our own products. Because the day when you're supposed to learn software, figure out where some feature is, I want to add reflection. So Rocket Team has a reflection and a shadow feature. So in one click, you're able to add natural looking shadows to products. So
Okay.
today you have to go click on an image, scroll somewhere, enable shadow, then there are a bunch of sliders and all of those things to
Yes.
get the right sort of shadow, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
instead I could just type and say that add a realistic looking shadow, and then it can interface with our product and add
Mm,
that shadow, right? So that's the sort of power that we are getting. The software that we are building can become a lot more human and a lot more accessible to people and a lot more powerful because of that. So I'm really excited about how many more AI companies are coming into the picture, many more tools
Yeah.
are available for us to interface with them. So I think as this becomes more and more native to more
Mhm.
SaaS products, I think it's going to be really the golden age of software.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally agree. And like you said, it's the ability for these tools to change the little nuances within the imagery, like you said, the drop shadows and just the little fine details there, just via prompts are, yeah, it's pretty incredible. And it's and it, like you said, it's become more normalized, so it's available to all businesses, and more people and business owners are more comfortable using these things. So I think that's just really gonna further accelerate the pace of development, as you guys have seen yourself and, in-house, that this is, you see that the demand is there. There's obviously a huge market for it. So, that's really just going to further accelerate it, the growth. Yeah, we're definitely in some good times here, Satej. Well, this has, been an awesome conversation, Satej. I really love talking about AI and all of this emerging technology and some of the things that brands like yours companies like yours have been doing. It's really kind of bleeding edge right now, and it's only going to continue to evolve. So, really good stuff. But lastly, before we do let you go, I always like to switch gears here so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. So if you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think that our audience would be interested to know.
Yeah. As a family, we have a lot of cats. So my wife and I, we used to have 5 cats until we moved places. We
Gotcha.
gave my cats to my parents, who had 17 of their own. So now they have 22
Wow.
cats.
Oh,
So
wow.
our 5 are with them, and that's a family of 22 cats.
22 cats. Wow. I think I've heard it all now. That's a lot of cats.
Yeah,
Hopefully your parents have a big place to manage all of these cats. And,
they do.
wow. Yeah, that's a lot. I'm a cat fan. I do love cats. I don't have one myself right now. Cause I've had issues with allergies, and it's just weird. Sometimes I go to people's houses that have cats and the allergies flare up. Other times it's not a problem. So decided not to take the risk with getting one, but, wow, 22 cats. I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's
Well,
quite something.
I'm sure there's always some type of activity going on when you have all of those curious cats running about and getting into stuff. I'm sure it keeps things keeps things interesting. I'm sure there's never a dull moment there in your parents' house.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. Well, thank you for sharing that, Satej. It's definitely an interesting, fun fact. But lastly, before we do let you go, what's the best way for our listeners and viewers to reach out to you if they want to pick your brain any more about, AI technology and ad creatives or anything under that sun? What's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm accessible on LinkedIn, fairly open to connecting with people. So find me, Satej Sirur, on LinkedIn, and I look forward to sharing whatever we know and where we think the world is going.
All right. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. We'll be sure to have the link to your guys' website as well as your LinkedIn profile link within the show notes, as well as on our website. So thanks again, Satej, for joining us today on the E-commerce Marketing Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Arlen.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level but are tired of weeding through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.